Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of Strata Speaks. Today we have Adarsh Suresh. Adarsh here at Strata handles the highest number of NRI portfolios with us. Adarsh Suresh was born and raised in the investments industry itself. He started his career working with mutual funds, private equity, and now he's working with Strata. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sukhman. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
First of all, hats off, man. I mean, since day one, since the day I've met you, right, you are doing numbers at a very good pace, right? And if I talk about the NRI investors, I mean, that's your favorite take. I mean, for me, something which is like desserts, right, that is an NRI investor for you. But I want to understand these NRI investors, they schedule calls at different times which are not matching the Indian times also. Still, how do you manage to have calls with them whenever they want to and come on time to the office?
Now, that's an interesting question, Suki. But, the flip side of it, basically, you tend to start your day early, right? The whole idea of speaking to different people living across time zones, it's quite interesting. And, I tend to start my day early, have these conversations early in the morning, then get to office, which in turn helps me beat the notorious Bangalore traffic. So, most of the days I get to office on time. And yeah, that helps me basically. Yeah.
You know, starting early helps me as well, though I don't start early, obviously. But I have observed that my car is giving a good mileage whenever I start early. So, yeah, that's there. But coming to that, so when we talk about specific numbers and all, what are the generic questions which come from an NRI who's planning to invest with us? Do they have a set plan, or is there any entry level questions which they have, or anything which which is fearing them a lot? Are there any specific set of questions which you have?
Right. Now, understanding a perspective from an NRI's mindset, right? They live thousands of kilometers away from the country. And it's very common for them to have a lot of questions when they are considering this asset class for the first time. There are a variety of questions which are very common between these set of investors, starting from the safety of these investments. Because fractional ownership as an avenue, as you would know, is relatively a new concept. Again, alien to these investors in the past. Safety of investments is the primary question which these investors have in mind. Liquidity is some concern where, they've had bad experiences in the past with regards to real estate. This being one of the most opaque instruments someone can put their monies into. Liquidity concerns have always been there. Now, coming down to the regularity or the guarantee of your returns. So, more or less, these three are the concerns that these investors prima facie have when they evaluate this as an asset class. Now, also, though it's not a concern, from a practical standpoint, since they live, miles away from where the activity actually is, how feasible is it for them to invest sitting at different corners of the world? That is also a major problem where have been keeping these investors away from looking at this asset class in particular. Going by some investors who have relocated from the country years back, and they do not have anything in India. They are totally isolated from the country. They don't travel back. So practically, it's impossible for them to own real estate, right? Now, these are the major four concerns that I would say. Now, from a safety standpoint, right? So these investments that you make into any of the properties through Strata, though you follow an institutional model, you are end of the day owning a fraction of a premium real estate, which is backed by a hard commercial asset. So I would say you don't have a chance of your capital eroding away. This is always safeguarded from any volatility or fluctuations because you own a hard asset at the end of the day, right? So from a safety standpoint, this would be one of the most secure investments that they could consider if they are very particular about deploying this into real estate, right?
In terms of, let's say, if I want to understand an insight from you, generally for an NRI, since you spoke that he's sitting miles away, kilometers away from us, right? Now we want to display the safety part to them. So how would they understand that in a digital way, or maybe in just a screen? How can they understand that their safety is intact, everything is regularized, everything is on time? How do you tackle that? How do you answer that to them?
Right. Now, in terms of making this as much as transparent as possible to these investors, because having their confidence is something that actually matters, right? When you're evaluating this asset class, you need to be confident to put in your money, and safety is the foremost, right? When you consider investing into Strata on the platform, be it any opportunity that is live right now, I give you a total set of information regarding the whole aspects of the property, right from all the legal information that comes to you upfront, including the title search reports, the tenancy agreements which we have in place, to all the nuances of these investments. Since these are SPV related structures, you would have all the SPV documents upfront. Now, if you're a novice investor or a first time investor, what I actually tell these investors, though at Strata, these properties come on board after multiple levels of vetting, it is always advisable for you to consult your lawyers or chartered accountants for that regards. Verify the authenticity of these documents once more, as a last step, so that you're 100% confident before going all in and deploying your capital. Now, from that standpoint, you have all the information that you require, in terms of aiding you with the decision making process. And in that standpoint, you will have all the information which you require upfront.
Diving a bit more into this part where you guys generate, I think, an asset audit report, which gives, let's say, the current and maybe future projections of this property, right? Now, who prepares these reports? And if these reports are prepared, can these reports be understood by a layman or someone who's working, let's say, as a tech head or a director or maybe some other company sitting miles away? Can this help them?
Right. Before answering that, upfront, I'll just simplify the concept of audit report to investors, right? Now, it basically means a valuation report. Now, when you evaluate any property, you need to make sure that you're investing or acquiring these properties either at a discount to the market price or at a par to, what the market is. Now, acquiring this at a premium won't make any sense because, you're looking this from an investment standpoint, and acquiring at a premium would not give you the opportunity to maximize the potential of capital gains, right? Now, that is where this becomes very important. And through fractional ownership, or when you consider an avenue like fractional ownership, where you're not physically going and evaluating or doing your own market diligence before buying this asset, right? That's where valuation reports become very important for you. Now, what it actually speaks as a detailed report which speaks about the micro market in detail, the kind of developments or the kind of numbers that exist in that particular micro market with regards to yield or previous transaction reports, etc. Now, also this speaks to you or gives you information about the real time value of the land or the building that you're going to acquire right now. So I think this report becomes very valid or very important for an NRI investor because you are not physically present in India while you're investing into this property. Now go through the whole report, you get a flavor of what exactly the market is, whether it's an industrial micro market, an office micro market, what are the future potential of growth in that particular area, and make sure that you're actually entering at a right price, right? So that's why it becomes very important. And for all our properties, we have an external valuation partner to make sure that these reports are not biased. Now, if I bring an opportunity on the platform and I tell you, hey, Sukhman, this is at par to the market, or, I'm buying it at a discount. Now, you can actually come back and question me, isn't this, opinion or a report biased? Because, there's a
Correct.
conflict of interest that could come in
Yes,
there.
yes.
Now, to avoid this and to have the best of experts working for us in this regard, we have the largest IPC in India who works along with us in terms of evaluating all our properties from a valuation front, right? Now, this is considered more or less the Bible of the industry when you're going ahead and buying any properties, right? More or less, this becomes a standard what every buyer and seller follows in the market.
So
Yeah.
probably, if I'm quoting you correctly, not only in terms of the investment part we have solved some problem, but if we talk about the valuation part, or to simplify it, the MRP of anything, right? That valuation report will give us that correct thing, right? But digging more into that, if a valuation report is giving you about the value, how are they coming to it? Is there any specific method they use, like a cap rate method or anything which they use, or vicinity rentals? How are they doing it?
So, these are professionals who run the show and they have multiple models of evaluating and, arriving at a conclusion saying that, hey, this property as per market today is worth so much. Now, if I have to go a bit more detail into it, as your understanding is right, cap rate could be one comparison where, what kind of rentals you generate for the amount of money you invest. So could be a comparison avenue, or they could again deep dive into the transactions which has happened during a particular time period. Now, for example, if I'm to go ahead and acquire something today in Bangalore, for example, what ideally this report would give me is the insight about the recent transactions in that particular micro market. Hey, this property was bought at 100 rupees per square feet. There was another acquisition which was done 3 months back at 110 rupees per square feet. So this report ideally makes sure an investor is entering into a transaction at the right market prices. Now there cannot be a scenario where you are uninformed about the micro market prices, you make a very expensive buy, and years down the line you struggle to make a successful exit at lucrative numbers. So a valuation report ideally solves that problem for you, and as a platform for NRI investors, this is something that Strata have been advising them from day one. Hey, look at all the information before you make an investment decision, because on the platform everything you invest becomes an informed decision making. There is no ambiguity around any decisions that you make. Any information that you require in terms of arriving at a decision before you deploy the capital is always at your fingertips.
That's nice. So, talking about the valuation part, people know that yes, whatever valuation Strata is going to offer them for their investments, that is correct. That is all sorted. But sometimes when we talk about reports, right, there are other reports which are such as your title reports and all. So, a title report for that matter uh, gives an investor what kind of an understanding? See, valuation is very easy to be derived at. I can call 10 different brokers within that area by doing a simple Google search and I can get valuation for it. But how does title report help into the entire thing?
Got it. Now, in terms of title report, so this is the most important thing that you consider before investing into any properties, right? Now, not necessarily on any properties on Strata's platform, but if I am to individually go and buy a piece of land today anywhere, now the first thing what I look at is the price at which we acquire the property, right? And the second, or the most important thing is to make sure that the property is free of any legal challenges and it has complied with all the specified legal clauses or conditions. Now that is where a title report comes into play. Now a title report tells you that the property is ideally free from any legal challenges or hiccups that could come in. It actually speaks about what is pending and what is the advisory from the legal consultant who is doing it. Now, as a practice in Strata, before you make a token payment or before you make an investment on the platform, you would have access to these reports upfront. Now, for you as an investor, it means that you ideally make sure that the property is free from any legal challenges, right? Which gives you a lot of peace before you deploy a single rupee into any properties. Now, also one thing as a process that we have followed from day one, we are very conservative with regards to these properties when it comes to the legal aspects. We only do properties which has 100% clean title, and we make sure the property has complied to all the specified legal compliances. And you would have this from a tier 1 legal advisors who work along with us in terms of having the legal report and a clean legal opinion on the asset.
So once you have that progress report or maybe an asset audit report, you would have negotiated
Correct.
The seller for the correct pricing for your property, and simultaneously you're going for the best and the clean title reports which
Right.
are possible. So for the person who's sitting miles away, it is a no-brainer for them to invest into the property
Correct.
because let's be honest, the valuation is clear, the title is clear, finance and legal both aspects are clear.
Right.
The only part which they would talk about or maybe have questions about it is the exit part. So how do you define exits over here at Strata? Is it an exit cap rate kind of a scenario which you convey, or is it vicinity developments which you talk about? What is the question that comes from an NRI, and how do you answer that?
Right. Now, I'll break that question again into two parts. One, from an exit standpoint, we position this as an allocation in your overall portfolio of instruments, right? Again, when you invest into this asset class in particular, you would ideally need to give a 5 to 7 year of investment horizon at least. Now, that's exactly the time when your property compounds in terms of the value. Now, when you go ahead and acquire a property today, you cannot expect that the property would give you a very healthy return in the next 2 years. And this is not an asset class for you if you have a short term mindset. Now, invest into these properties at least with a 5 to 7 year of investment horizon. That's when these appreciate substantially in terms of the capital value. Now, in terms of an exit, right, does have been a pain point, as you would also know. Now at Strata, what we do was, since we are the asset managers for all the opportunities that come on our platform, now it is our responsibility to give a successful exit to investors. Now, what could be our ideal routes? It could be large funds who are buying this properties as a part of their portfolio in India. It could be individual investors who want to buy these properties over. It could be a REIT structure even, if we explore that opportunity. Now, our exit avenues are vast. I mean, it's just about doing the correct diligence, identifying the right opportunity when you need to offload the inventory, and then maximizing that returns for investors. But as a thumb rule, 5 to 7 years is what you need to keep in mind. And if you think the money that you would want to deploy into this asset class needs to be pulled back before that particular time frame, this is not ideally something that you should look at.
So, what is your take when there are other players in the market who come and talk about the fact that we will give you an extensive IRR, maybe an upwards of a certain percentage, which is not even achievable. Uh, what is your take on all of them? Do they have such concerns? Do they talk about all these things, or just a lucrative thing they are making it for all our current investors and luring them in?
Right. So, from an NRI perspective, India is still an alpha market, right? There are investors who live in countries which have a minus rate of interest. I mean, bank takes money if you have your money parked in the banks. Now, when you look at that perspective, there could be, properties where you see, promising 20% or 18% for that regards. But from my experience till date, this is not an asset class where you should enter, with the expectations of such huge numbers upfront, right? If you reach that numbers, well and good, but it happens over a period of time when your holding period, is on the higher side. Now, as a thumb rule, 12 to 13% most conservative is what you could expect out of these opportunities because, you more or less have an 8% kind of average yield, and a property going by 5 to 6% per annum is basically something what you could expect on a worst case scenario, right? Now, at Strata, what we do is we are totally backed by data. Now, I don't come and give you expectations saying that the property would deliver a 16-20%, right? No, I do an extensive analysis before I get these properties on the platform, evaluate the micro market data, what has been the historic performance of real estate, and I give you a very realistic expectation. And also, once your capital is deployed at regular intervals of every 6 months to 1 year, you would be apprised about the real time valuation of your property. Now, this would also solve that problem for NRIs who used to buy properties in India only with the speculation or an expectation of these valuations going up over a period of time. So there is no real time data that helps you, say that you have made the right investment. Now, here what happens in our case, once you give me, start off with the basic investment on the platform, every 6 months, the same valuation report which we were speaking about comes to your inbox. Now, that ideally would help you as an investor to stay aware about the development that's happening with the area in the property which you have invested in. Now, for example, let's assume I bought a property today, 2 years down the line, the metro has become operational. For example, a very hypothetical scenario. When these kind of real estate developments happen, you see the land value or the real estate prices tend to bump up. Now, you as an investor sitting away would be appraised about this, real-time incident which has happened in the vicinity, which actually translates into a value appreciation on your property. Now, it helps you keep a track of your real estate portfolio just like you do with other assets.
So probably not only an email notification will tell you how your property is doing, but if let's say you all have an app also, you can talk about the valuations from that
Correct.
push notifications also.
Right. Now, along with the valuation reports, you would have access to a comprehensive asset management report which speaks about the progress of your property. Now, this is also going to be a 6 months to a year activity where you would have regular updates on these properties coming to you, which speaks about if any maintenance have been done in your asset. It speaks about that. All the compliance measures, including renewal of insurances, payment of property taxes, along with the receipts which gets captured. It even speaks about the performance of your tenant who is occupying your property. Now, this is also something that is very important because you have deployed capital in expectation of the cash flows to be constant, right? Now, that is where the tenancy becomes very important because your cash flows at the end of the day are dependent on the tenant paying you every month. Now, having a regular report which keeps a check on these factors would also give you a lot of peace of mind as an NRI. Again, since you are away from these premises and you have deployed capital with an asset manager. Now, the asset management report would solve those problems for you.
That's insightful. So probably if let's say the business X, not talking about the social media platform X, but if that business X who's operating out of that premises is not profitable, or maybe not doing good in the industry, or maybe they are about to witness some kind of a suit, you would get to know in advance that this is not going well, and probably we need to maybe have some second or a third option to occupy that property.
Correct. Now, that is something, the asset management team does proactive. So, our job actually at Strata, starts after an investor has deployed the capital. Now, we are making an asset class open to you for investments. Now, it is also a responsibility to make sure these investments are successful. That's where our asset management team comes into picture, and they interact with these tenants on an everyday basis, keeps the property up and running, does all the compliance activities, and make sure that it is maintained as a grade A asset at any point of time.
Talking more about the individual portfolios, how do you maybe recommend properties to NRIs in that way? Do they disclose their portfolios in advance, or do they tell you their investment horizon, or is just a simple IRR sell to all these NRIs?
Right. Now, let's understand this from a non resident Indian's perspective, right? Real estate have always been an asset class which has been aspirational to them since, they live away from the country. It comes with its own set of, say, disadvantages and hustles, of owning any real estate property. Now, it is always important to have a certain bit of exposure to real estate in any individual financial portfolios, right? It comes along with your mix of equity, debt, gold, alternates, etc. Now, this would fit into that part of your portfolio where you want predictability of returns, a very healthy cash flows coming into your accounts month on month, a low volatile investment with a very healthy capital appreciation over a period of 5 to 7 years. Now, I check all these points for you in terms of a checklist where these investments aren't volatile because you're investing into a hard property at the end of the day. Your cash flows are very much predictable and optical because these are leased out to larger tenants, a fortune tenant who is paying your rentals month on month. So, in a daily scenario, you cannot see those rentals getting affected, right? There are edge cases, but still there is predictability of returns. Now, when you compare the deployment, this is an appreciating asset class any day. The value of your property goes up over a period of time. Now, for NRIs who are considering, blocking a significant amount of capital, this ideally makes sense because they are beating the inflation only from the cash flows. Now, from the extent of your capital, if you have other fixed income instruments, your capital doesn't generate anything for you, right? Most of the instruments, you just have a cash flow and you just stick with it. Here, you have the regular cash flows plus your capital appreciates over a period of time, which in turn makes it very lucrative. Now, also, it gives you a tool of diversification, wherein if you are an investor investing into traditional real estate, right, only in expectations of your capital going up over a period of time and enduring the pain of managing the properties, this would ideally fit or solve that problem for you in your portfolios.
So there are certain Pardesis, right, the NRIs, who would want to return back to their country. Do you have some kind of customized solutions for them? Do they have some investment objective which they give you and then you define properties to them? How do you recommend these properties, or maybe some investor, some NRI investor who's investing again and again with you, right? What is their basic objective while they're doing the repeat investments with you?
Right, I'll just take an real-time experience which a client has shared with us. Now, this client have been with us more or less from the start, from the time we came in as a concept to raising about 1,600, 700 crores right now. Now, he as an investor wants to have a residual income portfolio in India because he is planning to retire and fly down to country in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, for him, what's important by the time he comes back to India, he needs his capital to be safe. Now, he was an investor who was investing into traditional residential real estate in the past at 2 to 3% returns and going through the hassle of going through all the paperwork and all these matters when he comes down for a 20-day vacation to India. Now, for him, this ideally fits or solves his problems. He is maintaining a portfolio just that when he comes back and retires in India, he has a healthy cash flow coming to his account, which would ideally help him meet his daily expenses and take care of, reinvestments again. He is trying to build a real time, quite a large portfolio, which would ideally help him fund his, post retirement life in the country.
So management is sorted, investment of the assets is sorted, right? Reporting is sorted. You have just digitized and simplified the entire commercial real estate bit for our NRI investors. But there is one thing which would still concern them. What about the legacy of their investments? Certain times there can be a scenario that yes, they have spent maybe most of their time over there, but what about their children? How, if they want to transfer the properties at any point in time, or God forbid if something happens, how do we take care about that part for our investors?
Now, Suki, this have been one pressing pain point, for all these investors while considering investing into real estate because the transfer becomes a very hassleful process, right? Now, this have been something that we have solved from day one, being a tech-enabled platform. Any investments that you make on my platform, right after you complete the transfers, you have the flexibility of adding a beneficiary or a nominee to these investments.
Even
In the
if
case of an eventuality, I mean, if you need to get these transfers done, it's again a totally online process facilitated with digital signatures. Now, I'll give you one interesting aspect of this, which comes out or stems from a personal experience that I've seen back in the family, where there were, family members who were residing out of the country who used to come on a vacation for 20 days to India. And, they just come and spend 20 days in India over the whole year where they meet the family and friends. Now, this uncle who was, very real estate pro and had most of his money deployed into residential properties would actually spend half of his vacation only going behind the paperworks in case required, going behind and filing the property taxes, or again, in terms of making sure that his investment is safe and secure. I think, this have been a feedback from a lot of investors, when I started interacting with this non-resident crowd in Strata, this have been a pain point for a lot of investors. There were cases where investors had to just fly down to the country to make sure, that the property is safe due to, XYZ reasons. Now, this is something that we solve proactively. We are the asset managers. We take care of all these asset management services on your behalf and keep you regularly apprised regularly in terms of what have been done. So from that standpoint, it solves a very large problem for you when you consider investing into this. And in terms of transfers, say, if I wish to transfer my ownership to someone else or a third party down the line, again, the process becomes totally online. Now, you don't have to come back to the country or wait until you come back to get these activities done. It happens on your fingertips. Since we are totally tech driven, digital signature solves this problem for you. And in a week's time, you complete the whole formality of transferring the ownership from your name to a different person's name. So,
Cause
I really believe that is a big pain point that is being solved here, right?
so compared to a traditional or a conventional investment, where nowadays you talk about different developers, right? They have come up with schemes and ways to invest into again the residential properties which where we have right now. But when it comes to transfer, they don't have answers to it. But we are solving that problem from day one,
Correct.
right? And which is again an attracting partner or attracting bit for our NRI investors also.
Right.
This is as good as, sorry to cut you, but this is as good as we have. I just read about this part where asset registers in New Zealand. They have started something called an asset registers. So starting from your equity investments to your debt investments to wherever you have invested, along with the land also. So they will take the coordinates, and that coordinates will be added to an asset register, and this asset register will then be linked to your social security number.
Right.
Right. So this is as good as doing that only. So probably if you going ahead maybe show up or maybe disclose this kind of informations to a CDSL or an NSDL report, right, we will be replicating the same thing, right?
Right. That could also be a possibility. And again, in terms of a layman investor, right, if someone who has settled in outside India for a long period of time, you don't see the kids wanting to come back to India and settle down here, right? They own real estate here. Again, giving all this information to kids again and then coming down and sorting things out is not a viable option. Now, when you invest into real estate through platforms like us, that is one flexibility that's totally institutional. You can just drop an email, to the beneficiary saying that so and so are the investments that I've made in India, and even from a tracking standpoint, it becomes very easy for the entire family or the close group that's involved.
That's great. That's great. Any early hints for our investors who want to invest more with us?
Right. Now you sound like an investor, basically. I mean, we have helped investors diversify across commercial real estate, right? Now, if you look at our portfolio, there is a very healthy mix of grade A office spaces leased out to fortune tenants. You have large industrial opportunities leased out to some of the manufacturing giants, and these are state of the art facilities, right? We have had large logistics park and also retail opportunities as a portfolio mix till date. Now again, we have been working on certain lucrative asset classes which you could call specialty assets. Now healthcare is some segment where we have been working on over the last 1.5 years, doing our due diligence, understanding the market, and trying hard to get these properties for investors, because you could never think of investing into a large hospital in the past, right? Where your deployment could be 500,000 crores. Now we are trying to get healthcare assets. Similarly, working on certain hospitality assets where it could serve as an ideal diversification tool for you. So, we should soon have these lucrative opportunities coming along with our regular portfolio assets.
So you're trying to maybe replicate or have a parallel trend where NRIs and Pardesis come India for their medical treatments as well. But sometimes now they would can, or through you, they can own that particular medical facilities as well.
Now, again, I'll flip the question to a different standpoint. We have a very healthy base of doctors who have been investing on the platform from the time we have started, right? And again, when we were evaluating these opportunities, or rather scouting these opportunities, we have got a lot of insights. I mean, I don't think those insights would come to if you are going and enabling a consultant to work for you outside and understand this. So a lot of this opportunities, what comes to you on the platform, you just see the numbers and how lucrative it is as an investment opportunity. But there is a lot of work that goes behind, in terms of doing our due dil, understanding the specifics and economics of these trades, and then getting it live on the platform. But yeah, again, from that standpoint, coming back to your question, India is actually an ideal medical tourism destination if you go by the statistics and the amount of deployment that's happening, in the private equity domain with regards to healthcare opportunities. So that, sounds like an exciting opportunity to me, at least right now. And we'll have more information, over the coming weeks.
So then, we should forget about having the WHO numbers for our Indian hospitals. I think then we should maybe double the beds which we are forecasting, right, as per the WHO standards. Because if the statistics are in our favor to develop medical tourism, right, not only we would need these assets for our own use, for the people who are coming from outside the country as well, right?
Right, there is again a lot of scope, as I told. We have been doing this study for quite some time, and there is also a different emotional aspect to it, right? You're actually helping create an infra. I mean, someone who wants to set up a hospital, you're actually helping in terms of pulling in the funds, having the economic infrastructure done, and there is a lot of thing that goes beyond investment. When you consider these investments, so you are doing a greater good for the society from that standpoint.
So management and all will be done by one of the brands, and we can own real estate for this hospitality thing.
That's
right?
correct. So it's basically like, there is a large hospital functioning, for example, and you're actually the landlords. The hospital is working on your premises and paying you the rentals month on month.
And this is the business which can never go into losses. It will always be profitable.
I mean, not commenting on the profitability bit of it being a hospital asset. But yeah, from an investment standpoint, it makes a case for a very strong investment with, very solid compounded regular returns.
And recently, I've seen the same trend being followed by institutional investors also. I think Blackstone recently invested into one of the hospitality chains by name of Care in India, right?
So you see this trend, if you go behind and look the financials of large listed hospitals, there have always been foreign investments coming into it. You take the top chains, even from a listed markets, most of these entities are publicly trading on the exchanges, and they have institutional money which is infused into this. So historically, this have been asset classes which were only enjoyed by your funds or ultra HNIs, where we are trying to bring this into the public domain, where we are making this asset class accessible to investors. So that's again aspirational for us as a platform. We create a healthy mix of portfolio when it comes to commercial real estate.
That's great, Adarsh. Thank you, Adarsh. Thank you for coming on the show. It was very insightful to have you here.
Thank you, Sukhman. Thank you so much for having me. Been a pleasure.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Strata Speaks. Thank you.